Now that the meta has played out over the past month, we know exactly what is the most broken characters in all of Marvel Rivals. Characters with giant win rates and pick rates, huge upticks in ban rates, and characters that are super underrated. There's so much we gotta talk about in this video. We're gonna go through and highlight many of the interesting meta changes. With special thanks to the sponsor of this video, War Thunder, the top action military free-to-play game, period. Whether it's land, sea, or air, you get to control vehicles spanning an entire century on War Thunder. It includes so many modern military technologies, including guided missiles, thermal imaging, and smoke screens. Now, there's also a ton of other customizable options, and with the brand new update Hornet Sting, many maps have received graphical enhancements, and every single battle is gonna look even more authentic and sound better too. There's also major overhauls to the naval battles, so the gameplay is gonna feel overall more dynamic, and there's new vehicles, top fighters, Su-30, and the FA-18, and many more. There's a lot more changes on player feedback, so it's a really big update that makes the game higher quality, feel better, and more fun to play. Now, War Thunder is available for free on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC using my link in the description down below. All new players and those of you who haven't played War Thunder for half a year or more will receive some special bonuses, 100,000 Silver Lions, a special Decorator Eagle or Valor, and more. And War Thunder Mobile is available for free on iOS or Android, both of which will be in the description down below, so definitely check it out. I highly recommend War Thunder. Special thanks to War Thunder once again for sponsoring this video. So in this meta analysis, I first want to analyze some of the characters that have the highest pick rate, specifically in Grandmaster, to give us a good base of what is exactly dominating in the meta. Now, something that's really important though is characters that have really high pick rates above 25-30%. Oftentimes their win rate suffers because these characters are picked at a very high volume and players aren't always the most competent with these characters. People filter them, people don't play them extremely well, and because of the massive amount of pick rate, their win rate goes down relative to the giant volume of people that are just locking these characters because they're perceived to be good. And in general, if the pick rate is extremely high, the win rate can be low or lower than 50% and still be a very strong character in the meta. And we saw this when Cloak and Dagger was the best character in the triple support meta. When Cloak and Dagger Ultimate stacked, they only had like a 48% win rate, even though they were the most picked characters in the entire game. This kind of shows that just because a character is really picked, popular, and strong doesn't mean that win rate reflects that. But what happens when a win rate is still really high, even in spite of a very massive pick rate? Well, this is when you see a character that is actually still underplayed, even with a giant pick rate. That's how strong they are. They are so strong that they are actually warping the meta around them. And that's where we can look at the most picked character in the game right now, Rocket, at a 62.07% pick rate, which is a massive pick rate, just a crazy pick rate, more than we've seen from pretty much any character ever in history in Marvel Rivals. I mean, even Doctor Strange, when he was the most dominant, he was only rocking about a 50% pick rate. Cloak and Dagger got somewhat close, but I don't even think it was quite to 62%. That's a crazy pick rate, and you would expect that, similar to a lot of these characters when they get massive pick rates, that he would have a lower win rate in Grandmaster rank, but that's not true. Rocket is sitting at a 52.42% win rate, and that's incredible. Like, this character is actually still underpicked right now compared to how good he is, and he's by far the most picked character in the game. Basically, what happened is Rocket gained 30% more pick rate and only lost about 1.08% win rate, which is just absurd. And it really just showcases the power of Rocket. And there's a lot of things going for Rocket right now. I mean, his ultimate is extremely powerful. Even if it can be focused down, it's still an extremely powerful tempo play. Players are learning how to hide it in better spots so it's harder to break. And even if it does get destroyed, if you put enemies on the back foot, typically you're gonna win that fight easily, and at the very least create a giant advantage for your team. And Rocket's just building it really quickly. On top of that, with the amount of burst heal you can output, especially shooting people at the feet, being able to bounce that off and get that 110 healing, Rocket just has crazy burst, has a BRB res that's just gonna get someone back alive, which has always been really powerful and one of the reasons why Rocket has always had a high win rate. Now his ultimate is just generally very strong, comparable to a lot of the other support ultimates, and in some cases even more powerful. I mean, this character is crazy strong, crazy busted, crazy phenomenal, And yeah, it also shows that Rocket's power isn't really tied to his synergy formerly with Bucky and now with Punisher. He doesn't need that to be just insane. And yeah, I just can't state it enough how strong this character is. And he only has a ban rate of 1.36%. There are a lot of characters to ban right now. We'll talk about that a bit later. But I did want to just talk about Rocket's greatness right now. This character is undoubtedly the best character right now in the meta. I don't really think that you can actually argue with the stats here. It's just insane. Now, another character that I really need to hype up, the next most picked character in Grandmaster rank is 45.43% pick rate, and it's Emma Frost. And once again, Emma Frost has above 50% win rate at 51.33%. That is actually absurd. Now, there is a huge uptick in the ban rate at 9.73 compared to Rocket's 1.36. Emma Frost is banned quite a bit more, and makes sense because Emma Frost can just completely deny certain strategies, especially if you're trying to play a dive composition. Emma Frost is going to just shut down any mobility heavy character, so it really makes sense that you would want to ban her. And in general, you could also just ban her because of the synergy and the power behind it. But Emma Frost being picked that highly and still having a really, really high win rate is crazy. Once again, these are very similar to the numbers that we saw with Doctor Strange in his prime, and that's just crazy. I mean, Doctor Strange, I'm talking about in his prime with the team up, with the Hulk team up, back when Doctor Strange was like, I don't know, what is that, like 4 nerfs ago? That's how strong Emma Frost is looking right now. So if you think that this character is properly tuned or balanced or whatever, most likely, I would imagine, based on the pick rate and the win rate, this character is most likely going to receive some nerfs down the line. But for right now, this character is amazing. And y'all know that I play this character quite a bit, and I picked up very soon after touching the character, as most of us did, because she can put you in a cutscene and one-shot so many different people. This character is undoubtedly the strongest release character that we've had since launch, right? So any of the new characters, I think that Invisible Woman is still really, really good, but Emma Frost, I think, takes the top spot for the most powerful on release, and these stats are just absurd. Like, Rocket and Emma right now are the 2 most dominant characters in the meta. The highest pick rates in high elo and a very high win rate. Once again, in previous metas, we've had characters that had massive pick rates, and most of the time their win rate massively suffers relative to that. These characters are still rocking above a 50%. Even if these characters had a 47, 46%, they would still be good, probably overpicked, but still really good. Right now, with such high pick rates, it's almost like these characters should actually be picked more than they are, even though they're still picked the most by far. I mean, you're seeing a Rocket in more than 50% of all matches. You're seeing an Emma in almost 50% of all matches. You should probably be seeing these characters even more, and that's just a little bit absurd to think about. Now, moving down the pick rate tier, there's a couple of characters that are picked a ton, but just like I talked about before, they have a reduced win rate. So Invisible Woman and Magneto are trailing close behind in pick rate. They are 34% and 33% respectively. So both picked, still a massive amount, very, very high pick rate and almost no ban rate, but they're only occupying about a 47.56%, 47.66%, so right in that 47.5% range for both of these characters win rate wise. And it doesn't mean that these characters are bad or anything like that to have that lower than 50% win rate, because they have a massive pick rate. I think that that's really important to understand. A lot of people are filling to these characters. A lot of people are playing these characters when it's not most optimal. And one of the things that you can typically see when a pick rate is this high and the win rate is not quite to 50% is that there's probably some instances where these characters are a bit overplayed, or, you know, forced to be played based on how many people are playing that are not mains of these characters, and just not really getting the value that, you know, someone that really specializes in these characters would be getting. So it's not saying that these characters are bad. In fact, they're great. I mean, any character that has this high a pick rate is gonna be very, very good in the meta right now if they're being played this much in high elo. But it is important to say that these characters are not inclined to like gain more pick rate than this. In fact, they'll probably fall down over time and things will stabilize a bit more. And a really important thing that I want to point out here is that Emma Frost is a character that does synergize with Magneto. They have a direct synergy, as well as Psylocke. We'll talk about her a little bit later. But Emma Frost is winning way more than Magneto, even though Emma Frost is being picked more. So one of the things that I originally think is that Magneto is the best tank. You know, Groot, Magneto, Emma are definitely top 3 in my mind. And I think that Magneto was the character that I thought was number 1. But these stats kind of showcase that Emma is actually the strongest tank, the most flexible tank, and at least the hardest carry tank, especially in ranked play. Now for pro play, we'll have to find out how things kind of fall and stuff like that. But right now, Emma is just really outperforming everybody and is just insane. Like stats that are so ridiculous that I think almost a ban is assuredly going to happen. It's just crazy. But once again, Invisible Woman and Magneto are both still very, very strong characters and still very dominant in the meta, just not nearly as broken or not an outlier. I think these are characters that are like, everyone knows they're good. They're probably a bit overplayed right now, but they're still very good. And if you know what you're doing on these characters, you're going to definitely dominate, because a lot of people are picking these characters. A lot of people are winning games with these characters, but you know, some people are probably playing these characters a bit too much. Now, that being said, I wanted to talk about a couple more outliers that I think are really impressive as we move towards the end of the top 5 pick rate in Grandmaster. And one of them is Loki, 32.13% pick rate and a 52.29% win rate. Once again, a character that has picked a crazy amount and is winning a crazy amount in a very similar way that we showcase with Emma and Rocket. And one of those characters that I think is, once again, still dominating even though he's picked so damn much. Loki has kind of been that way for a while though. I think Loki is just such a strong character overall. He's just a bit complicated to get a grasp on, but even in spite of Mantises and Bucky's farming your freaking clones and getting extra value, it just doesn't matter. Like, this character provides offensive capability, defensive capability. His totems are one of the most powerful cooldowns in the game. His ultimate is extremely powerful as well. Just can be anything you need. Most of all, it's typically just a secondary defensive ult. And yeah, Loki's also really hard to dive. He has great mobility. He plays in a variety of compositions. And one of the things that I think is also important is that the Loki Rocket backline is my pick for the most powerful backline right now when played really, really well. Being able to go Rocket ult into Loki ult into another Rocket ult that you build up and then into another Loki ult. Like, you can chain these ultimates almost too fast, back to back to back. And you also provide just a lot of offensive power as well. Not to mention, Rocket, Loki, Emma is just almost an undiveable composition. I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, you can't dive anything. There's no targets for your dive. You just force people to play your pace, your game. If you try to dive, you're just gonna not catch the rocket. Loki's gonna do whatever he wants, teleport away, and Emma's gonna grip you. Like, it's such a strong, synergistic, even though there's no actual synergies here, I just think it's a really, really powerful backline, really, really powerful foundation for a composition. And we see that these characters are picked so much and they're still winning like a crazy amount. So I want you to keep your eye on these 3. These are my 3 biggest winners right now, characters that I think are just insane to learn right now. If you don't know how to play Rocket, Emma, or Loki, and you play any of these roles, you want to play a character that you can fill to when you're not playing your main, one of these 3 is a really surefire bet to just be very, very good right now. And I think it's just obvious by the metrics. Now, speaking of win rate, I did want to talk about some really big win rate outliers, characters that are most likely underpicked based on how good they are, and characters that I think are also just, in general, characters that you should keep an eye on. So number 1 is Storm. Storm still has a very high win rate at 55.06% win rate. I think this character is still really good. A lot of people kind of have completely slept on Storm. And it's kind of funny how really the changes to Storm didn't make or break the character. This character went from one of the most dominant characters that was banned every single game to a character that people more or less don't ban or ignore the bans from. And really, this character's still great, especially in poke compositions. I think Storm is really underpicked and underplayed. Now, it's understandable why. There's a lot of other characters to ban, and there's other powerful flyers to play right now, namely Human Torch, which we'll talk about in a second. But Storm is still really good, and the win rate does reflect that. Also, Magik. Magik has always had a pretty high win rate, 54.41%. I do want to say 2 things about Magik, though. Number 1, I think she is fairly hard to play at like a very, very high or perfect level, and that is going to limit this character's capability or pick rate. So even if this character is really good, doesn't mean that she'll get picked as much as she should, because she's hard to play. She's hard to pick up. She's hard to learn. I love this character, but I don't know how to play her at all. Another thing is I think that players are more prone to swap off of Magik when she doesn't work. Right now, unfortunately, I think the brawl meta doesn't really favor Magik all that much, because while Magik really wants to brawl right now, brawling Emma's, brawling freaking, you know, things is just not really that fun right now. I don't really think that that's what you would love to do. You can still do it, but yeah, I think the meta doesn't really favor Magik all that much. However, the pick rate and the win rate is still fairly high. I mean, a 13.38% pick rate. The character is actually still doing fairly well, so we'll have to wait and see how Magik kind of continues to develop. She's always like at the top of the win rates. Pretty much she's consistently been that way. Even though Magik isn't like a meta staple, she obviously is still having success in the hands of people that are skilled with her. So I think she could be a really good pocket pick, or a character, if you want to invest in her, you can still succeed with her if you get good enough with her. So that's kind of a really good sign for those of you who want to pick up a character, but you're afraid that character might fall off in higher elo as you get better. Magik is definitely the opposite of that. Captain America, 54.27% win rate. Another character that I think is grossly underpicked. He also just got a nerf, so this would probably kind of get reeled back a bit. But even with that tiny bit of HP nerf, it's not going to massively change how strong Captain America is. Really, Captain America became quite a bit stronger, and I think a lot of people just haven't really played him or learned him that much yet. He's kind of like one of those characters where if they get a change out of nowhere and they haven't really been meta before, it's not like people can just go and start picking them right now. Like if tomorrow they super buff Strange, I think Strange's pick rate would instantly super skyrocket, right? Like to a crazy degree, because there's so many people that know how to play Strange that if he became better, he would be more picked. But Captain America isn't quite that way. Like his pick rate did jump up 10%. It's almost at 17%, which is much higher than it was before. And he still has a really high win rate, which means that Captain America is still, you know, gonna increase more in win rate going forward. But I do think that he didn't increase as much as he should, based on people just not generally knowing how to play him as much, because he hasn't been meta before. Characters that haven't been meta before typically take a little bit longer for people to pick them up and learn them. And I think Captain America is in a spot right now where he's good to learn. He's actually a great character to learn, whether you're trying to contest, whether you're trying to play with a dive comp. He's just a really good all-around pick that I think is a diver that is just pretty good against crowd control, and he can stay alive against some amount of crowd control. Not like all the crowd control in the world, but a good amount, and that's a good place to be for a diver. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about is Mantis at a 53.87% win rate. A character that has a really high win rate, but only had a 7% pick rate. However, Mantis just got a buff. So did Adam. He got a pretty substantial buff. And on top of that, the res comp is still there, and it's still strong. I would be very surprised if Mantis doesn't see a lot more play going into this second part of the first half of the season, because, you know, multiple characters in the res comp getting buffed and Mantis already having a positive win rate. I think really the pieces around Mantis were most likely the problem. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mantis sees a giant uptick in that pick rate and probably still maintains a reasonable win rate relative to that because of the buffs. Now, I talked a lot about tanks and supports, but I wanted to talk really quickly about the most picked and most dominant DPS. Right now, it's undoubtedly Hela and Psylocke are the top two, with Mr. Fantastic trailing pretty close behind. Hela and Psylocke being about a 20% pick rate pretty much across the board, and they have about a 50% win rate. So Hela's a little bit less than that at 49, Psylocke's a little more than that at 51.73, actually quite a bit more than that. It's almost 2% more, so that's actually pretty notable. These characters are winning a lot and they're being played a lot. Hela a little bit less so, but I think she gets a little bit less help with her synergy, and right now I think Psylocke is just the best DPS right now. With that win rate and that pick rate, I think Psylocke could also increase in pick rate further from here. Not to mention, Psylocke just synergizes really well with the Emma Frost synergy. And yeah, I mean, that's just great because both of the characters are already good. Emma Frost is just insane. So yeah, Psylocke is really good. Hela's really good. And then Mr. Fantastic, 16.55% pick rate and about a 50% win rate. So right on the dot right now, which means I don't really expect him to go up or down anywhere from here. Now, there's two more things I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention notable differences in low elo, and I also wanted to mention bans. So first off, notable differences in low elo. Right now, the most picked picked character in all ranks is actually Cloak and Dagger, with a 47.24% pick rate and a 47.97% win rate. And that's actually a good win rate for that level of pick rate. Once again, we talk about high pick rate doesn't always equate, high win rate. Most of the time it doesn't, and that's perfectly fine because that happens when players kind of all just pick this character a lot, and, people aren't always playing a perfect fit for them or their composition or whatever, right? So this is actually normal, and this is actually good. Cloak and Dagger is good in the majority of ranks, just really falls off very, very hard the higher in rank you go. But something that's interesting, though, is that Rocket has just under that in pick rate, 43.35%, and a 54.02% win rate across all ranks, which is going to be predominantly lower elo, lower and mid elo. And that just really means that you should be playing Rocket basically regardless of the rank you're in. Whether you're in high elo or low elo or mid elo, you should be playing Rocket. Like, that high of a win rate and that high of a pick rate on Rocket means that Rocket should be played even more than he already is, like by a lot in the average elo. So yeah, that's a little bit absurd. But also Emma only has about a 50% win rate with a 40% pick rate, which is still really, really good, but not quite as high. Other than that, low elo looks more or less the same as high elo. Of course, there's a little bit more Spider-Man play, a little bit more Strange play, a little bit more Scarlet Witch play, and most notably, Psylocke and Hela are not the most dominant DPS in lower elo, even though they're clearly the most dominant DPS in higher elos. I think they're just very difficult characters to play at a high level. They are very mechanically intensive, so it does make sense there. Now, last up, I did want to talk about bans really quickly. For all ranks and just across the board, the top 5 bans are going to be Groot at 42.8, Hulk at 32.2, Spider-Man at 30.2, Iron Fist at 21.8, and Human Torch at 19.2. Now, one of the things that people always ask me is, why is Groot so banned? Like, a lot of people say there's so many counters to Groot, from Wolverine to Punisher with the Rocket Team Up. Why is Groot the most banned? Well, for one, a really good Groot can play around a lot of their counters, with Wolverine probably being the hardest one, but I think if you surround Groot with crowd control and Invisible Woman and stuns or whatever, he could still play around a Wolverine. But most importantly, the thing that I say is that if you want to carry a game on tank, you enforce your will. You enforce your will in the lobby. You force enemies to play your game, right? And that's what a Groot gets to do that other tanks don't, is he gets to force the entire lobby to play his game. People say, oh, you can deal with his walls easy, you just shoot them. You have to shoot them. He forces you to do what he is all about, right? He's not just gonna be cosmetic. He's not just gonna be there. He forces you to play his game. You step out of position, and he can take a small positional mistake into a large one. And I do think that when you go up against better and better Groots, you realize that Groot can just single-handedly carry a lobby in a way that no other tank can. So it does make sense that he's the most banned, even though depending on your hero pool, what composition you're running, I don't necessarily think you always need to ban Groot. He's like much worse against mobility heavy compositions. So if you're playing like an all-in dive, it's not going to be as big of a deal. But yeah, it's just something to note. Hulk makes sense to be banned, and he's probably a bit overbanned because he also deals with Namor, and he also somewhat deals with the Iron Man synergy as well, although not to the big extent, not the real reason that he's banned. But just the fact that you can ban Hulk and you can hit Hulk and Namor. Hulk himself is also just really good, but being able to hit 2 birds with 1 stone, I think is a good deal. Spider-Man's an interesting one because I thought that this character would only be banned like in low elo, right? I don't really think that Spider-Man is that worthy of a ban in my personal opinion, especially in higher elo. But of course, people just don't want to deal with a Spider-Man in low elo, especially when he's moving at Mach 10 and your teammates are not peeling. Like, I get it. But surprisingly, Grandmaster, he's still the 5th most banned at a 16.74%. And in Celestial, which doesn't have a lot of data, by the way, that's not why I'm mainly not using it, because there's just not a lot of matches. He's still the 5th most banned, like at 14.77%. Spider-Man is actually still banned. I know he just got a nerf, so that hasn't been kind of slotted into the system yet. But I really just think that people find Spider-Man more annoying than he is good. He's like the only one out of all the characters that are banned that I think is banned more so because he's annoying, not because of how strong he is. And then there's Iron Fist, which is a character that is banned at all ranks in mid elo and high elo. And it makes sense. Iron Fist is just all around one of the best DPS right now. Very solid against so many different things. And then Human Torch, last up, the last character we'll talk about, a character that really works the game around him in a way that other characters just don't. And he's the 5th most banned in all ranks. But if you go all the way up to Grandmaster, he's the 3rd most banned. And in Celestial, he's the 2nd most banned. He's just banned a lot. And Iron Fist actually takes that top spot, the top banning spot in Grandmaster, in Celestial. And he has a super high win rate in those ranks as well. So Iron Fist is a character that I think is just really, really incredible right now. A lot of players just don't know how to play him, and he's actually really underpicked compared to how good he is. Once again, I say that, once again, very similar to Captain America, when a character isn't really broadly played in the metas before, and then he suddenly becomes really good, it takes a while for people to adjust, right? I think Iron Fist is one of those characters where there was a lot of Iron Fist specialists, but it's not like people that were grinding the meta were grinding Iron Fist before. So if he stays in this really powerful state for a while, I think his pick rate will rise dramatically relative to that, but it takes a while for people to kind of adapt. But I think Iron Fist is the character that is really, really strong and really banned quite a bit. Just a massive increase in ban rate from the previous season. Now he's at a 35.26% ban rate in Grandmaster, and in Celestial, it's a 30% ban rate, which is just freaking insane that he's being banned at that high of a margin. But anyways, these are just some insights into the meta. If you take it away anything from this video, it's the freaking lock Rocket, okay? but all joking aside, lock Rocket. Anyways, smash the like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.